Dham ki,
Jai.
Ganga, Jagannath Puri Dham ki,
Jai.
Ganga Mai ki,
Jai.
Yamuna Mai ki,
Jai.
Bhakti Devi ki,
Jai.
Tulsi Devi ki,
Jai.
Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki,
Jai.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki,
Jai.
Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki,
Jai.
Nitai Gaura Premanande.
Hari Bol.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories, all glories, all glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Hari Bol.
Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Tirtha Swami Niti Namane Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shripadmane Shri Guru Purna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Iti Namane Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirajit Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtuki. Hare Krishna devotees, we're continuing our study of Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, chapter number 6, text 37. Thank you, Mother Shubharati, for putting it up on the screen. Naham Nayuyam Yadritim Gatim Vidur Navamadeva Kim Utapare Sura Tanmayaya Mohita Buddhayas Let me say, Tanmayaya Mohita Buddhayas Twidam Vinir Mitam Chatmas Shamam Vichakshamhe Naham Nayuyam Yadritim Gatim Vidur Navamadeva Kim Utapare Sura Tanmayaya Mohita Buddhayas Tui Idam Vinir Mitam Chatma Samam Vichakshame Mahe Naham Nayuyam Yadritim Gatim Vidur Navamadeva Kim Utapare Sura Tanmayaya Mohita Buddhayastvidam Vinir Mitam Chatma Samam Vichaksham Mahe. Please chant.
Naham na yuyam yadritam gatim vidhur navamadeva kim utapare sura tanmayaya mohita buddhayastvidham vinirmitam chatmasamam vichakshmahe.
Hare Krishna. Naham nayuyam yadritim gatim vidur navamadeva kimuta pare suraha tanmaya mohita buddhiyastvaidam vinirmitam jnana samama vichakshmahe. नाहं न योऽयं यदृतं गतिं विदुर्न वा मदेव किम् उता परेशुरा तन्मायया मोहित बुद्धया त्वयिदम् विनिर्मितं चात्म समं विचक्षमे विचक्षमहि कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण नाहं न यामं यत्रेतं गतिं विदुर्न वा मदेवा किम् उत परेशुराः तन्मया यामहिता बुद्ध्यस्त्वयेदं विनिर्मितं चात्मा क्षमं विचक्ष्महे हरे कृष्ण
हरे कृष्ण नाहं नायुहं यात्रितं गतिं विदुर् न भामदेवा किमुता परेशुरा तन्मायाया महिता बुद्धस्त इदम् विनिर्मितं च आत्मा समं विचक्षमे हरे कृष्ण
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move to the word for word. Na, neither. Aham, I. Na, nor. Yum, all you sons. Yat, whose. Ritam, factual. Gatim, movements. Vidu, do know. Na, nor. Vamadeva, Lord Shiva. Kim, what? Uta, else. Apare, others. Suraha, demigods. Tat, by his. Mayaya, by the illusory energy. Mohita, bewildered. Budhaya, with such intelligence. Two, but. Idam, this. Vinir mitam, what is created. Cha, also. Atma samam, by dint of one's personal ability. Vikaksh shmamehe, observe. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Since neither Lord Shiva nor since neither Lord Shiva nor you nor I could ascertain the limits of spiritual happiness, how can other demigods know it? And because all of us are bewildered by the illusory external energy of the Supreme Lord, we can see only this manifested cosmos according to our individual ability. We have many times mentioned the names of the 12 selected authorities, Dvadvasa Mahajana, of which Brahma, Narada, and Lord Shiva head the list as the first, second, and third in order of merit of those who know something of the Supreme Lord. Other demigods, semi-demigods, Gandharvas, Charanas, Vidhadharas, human beings, or asuras, cannot possibly know fully about the potencies of the Absolute Lord, Sri Krishna. The demigods, semi-demigods, Gandharvas, etc., are all highly intelligent persons in upper planets. The human beings are inhabitants of the intermediate planets, and the asuras are inhabitants of the lower planets. All of them have their respective conceptions and estimations of the absolute truth, as does the scientist or the empiric philosopher in human society. All such living entities are creatures of the material nature, and consequently, they are bewildered by the wonderful display of the three modes of material nature. Such bewilderment is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita 7:13. Trabir Gunamayer Bhavir Ebe Sarvam Idam Jagat. Every entity, beginning with Brahma down to the ant, is individually bewildered by the modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. Everyone thinks in terms of individual capacity, that this universe, which is manifested before us, is all in all. And so the scientist in human society of the 20th century calculates the beginning and end of the universe in his own way. But what can the scientist know? Question mark. Even Brahma himself was once bewildered, thinking himself the only Brahma favored by the Lord. But later on, by the grace of the Lord, he came to know that there are innumerable more powerful Brahmas as well, and far bigger universes beyond this universe. And all of these universes combined together form Ekapad Vibhuti, or 1/4 of the manifestation of the Lord's creative energy. The other 3/4 of his energy are displayed in the spiritual world. And so, what can the tiny scientist with a tiny brain know about the absolute personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna? The Lord says, therefore, Mohitam Nabi Janati Mam Ibiyam Param Avyayam. Bewildered by such modes of material nature, they cannot understand that beyond these manifestations is a supreme person who is the absolute controller of everything. Brahma, Narada, Lord Shiva know about the Lord to a considerable extent, and therefore one should follow the instructions of these greatest personalities instead of being satisfied with a tiny brain and its playful discoveries, such as spacecraft and similar products of science. As the mother is the only authority to identify the father of a child, so the Mother Vedas presented and recognized by the recognized authorities such as Brahma, Narada, or Shiva, is the only authority to inform us about the absolute truth. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swapatantikam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Today's verse once again. Since neither Lord Shiva, nor you, nor I could ascertain the limits of spiritual happiness, how can other demigods know it? And because all of us are bewildered by the illusory external energy of the Supreme Lord, we can see only this manifested cosmos according to our individual ability. So this nor you nor I refer to Lord Brahma and Narada, as mentioned here. So it makes sense. right? They're saying we are some of the Lord Brahma is the creator of the universe, Lord Shiva in control of the Tamagund and has a very highly respected position, important role in Krishna's plan, and Narada Muni being the son of Lord Brahma. These are very elevated uh, individuals. So if we can't understand, how can anybody else understand? How can the other demigods understand? What to speak of the people who were in a position lower than the demigods? And that is listed in the purport. The Gandharvas, the Charanas, the Vidyadharas, the human beings, the Asuras, all people that try to make claims about uh, an understanding of the absolute truth. They're saying, what can they really know? In other words, let's not fool ourselves. This is also um, uh, Lord Brahma here is also describing his personal limitations, and that no one but Krishna can really understand uh, the absolute complete reality. 12 Mahajans. We'll start off we'll can just as uh, see if we can remember them, stimulate our minds. So we got Brahma, Narada, and Shiva. They are the first three that are mentioned. Um, what are the remaining nine? Can we remember them? Srila Prabhupada brought it up.
Bali Maharaj,
Bali Maharaj is one, yes.
Yamaraj,
Yamaraj is another. Good.
Prahlad,
Prahlad, yes.
The four Kumars.
Four Kumars, and they're considered to be one of the.
oh,
They're not considered to be four of 12. If you wanted to combine them, it'd be 15 if they were. So that's right. Good.
Bhishma.
Bhishma, correct.
Yeah.
Who's
Sukadev Goswami.
Say that again.
Sukadev Goswami.
Yes, speaker of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Good. We got two more.
Janak Maharaj. Right? Janaka.
Janaka. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Two more after this. Son of Devahuti.
Kapil Dev. Yeah. Lord Kapila.
And this one has there's like an age named after him, or there's a series of ages together are named after him.
Manu.
Manu, Swayambhuva Manu.
Yeah.
Very good, devotees. Okay, so as I was mentioning, Krishna can see and perceive full reality. All other beings, we don't have this ability, although we oftentimes try. And this is all the way from, the topmost being in this universe, Lord Brahma, all the way down to the most insignificant being. And there's always this struggle to be independent of Krishna and not recognizing Krishna's supreme nature. I wanted to focus today on this concept that Lord Brahma brings up here, that because we are bewildered by the illusory external energy of the Supreme Lord, we can see things only manifested according to our own individual ability. Srila Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita 7:13, which states, deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. A very relevant verse, because one, it explains that Krishna is above is above the material illusory energy and is not conditioned by it, and that everyone else is. And that is the difference between Krishna and everybody else. We all see according to our own limited capacities. And those limited capacities are um, uh, they're driven by our conditioned nature. What we perceive is a sign of our conditioned nature. So Srila Prabhupada points out the scientist, and we've talked several times about that, that through experiment, through theory, they're trying to create with their tiny brains to know the absolute personality of Godhead, or try to understand the absolute, all of reality, the extent of the universe. Srila Prabhupada quotes that, according to, some study at some point in time, they try to calculate the beginning and end of the universe. And this is still going on. And then right after that, he pulls out the Lord Brahma, who's the creator of this particular universe. He didn't even know what was beyond him. And when Krishna told him that actually you're just one Brahma and there's many other Brahmas that are much bigger than you, his knowledge expanded far beyond his ability to conceive of what it was. In other words, he had to come to the point of surrendering to Krishna. There's at our Sunday feast lecture on Sunday, Madan Gopal Prabhu brought up this quote from a famous scientist named Werner Heisenberger. Some of you may not have been there to hear it, but it's very relevant to what we're speaking about today. Now, Werner Heisenberg was a nuclear physicist. He worked on, very, nuclear project, very intelligent individual in terms of science, and helped develop the nuclear aspects of power and how we can use it even in some of the most horrible ways, he was a part of. But he said the first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will turn you into an atheist. But at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you. So it made me think of this, that in the very beginning, we feel that there's some independence, through mathematical calculation, through our own knowledge and understanding, that we're able to draw conclusions. And then we become illusioned by the material energy to think that these conclusions are factually true and that they have actually merit to them. But as time goes on, and if we're honest with ourselves, we're able to see that actually, as Lord Brahma found out, that actually there's so much more beyond what we feel or what we perceive is actually there, that we come to the point that we're able to see the absolute. So at the bottom of the glass, if you're drinking a glass, the first sip, you come to the point of atheism. But at the bottom of that glass, God is waiting for you. You'll come to the point that it's beyond the limitations of me knowing, of the body and the physical elements that are around me. I can only know very little. George Chandra Prabhu also brought this up on Tuesday very nicely. You know a lot about a little, or you know nothing about a lot. But it comes to the point where in honesty, it's far bigger than our ability to perceive. And when we hear these statements by Lord Brahma, that he, Shiva, Lord Shiva, Narada Muni, if they're unable to completely understand Krishna, then who are we to think that we're going to be able to perceive all of reality? So this this idea that we're all acting according to our individual abilities can explain why there is so much conflict in this world. And I believe that when we understand this, it will help us navigate through conflicts that we face. So a common example of this is that, or something that we can relate to, is that we tend to see things from our limited points of view. When you're in a discussion with somebody, you see things from your perspective. And oftentimes our perspective, we're advocating for our own self-interest. And as a result, conflicts can arise if two people have two different self-interests. There are 8,400,000 species of life. And in each of those species, there's some level of communication or way of living, level of consciousness that they have. In the human form, in the various human species, we communicate a certain way. People are on different levels of consciousness. So therefore, everybody's going to see, whether you're a dolphin swimming in the ocean, your reality is going to be different than a fisherman who's driving on top of the ocean, or even that of a whale, or not a whale, but maybe a shark that's swimming underneath the ocean all the time, where a dolphin comes up sometimes, and the person in the boat is on the surface all the time. Their perspective is going to be different. What to speak of the unlimited, the entities that live beneath the ground, those that live above the ground, those that are various, different forms in the animal species, those that are in the plant species. They all have different perspectives. And this is outlined in the different stages of consciousness. Anamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and Anandamaya. At the very beginning, the basic level of consciousness is that of wanting food or nourishment, without which, the body can't survive. Food, oxygen, just being able to exist and go on for another day, to have the energy to exist. And then the next stage is self-defense, self-preservation, survival. And this is, for the most part, the level in which, the animal kingdom comes up to, is that just living in terms of self-preservation. And if you're only seeing things from that perspective, that I have to preserve and protect myself and my family, then you're going to see things according to your own individual ability from that perspective, through that conditioning. The next stage, Manomaya, is the mental platform, We develop maybe some values in life, some laws, some rules to live by. We form different types of systems. We're able to speculate with our minds about different types of philosophical ideas. So if that is our level of consciousness, we're going to see things from that perspective. And then the next step is Vijnanamaya, where there's some spiritual understanding. I'm not this body, but I'm a spirit soul. There's a philosophical approach to life, of living, that goes beyond just this, material, uh, just beyond this material world. And if that is our level of consciousness, we will see things and interact with other beings based on our individual ability. And then Anandamaya, devotional service to the Supreme Lord. When one actually comes in contact with a relationship with Krishna and acts in that relationship, where one no longer becomes disturbed by the activities of this material world, but advances into spiritual consciousness. And that is Anandamaya. So there's these different stages of consciousness, and based on that, we will see things from a different perspective. These different perspectives, as I mentioned, oftentimes are create conflict within us and in our relationships. So there's this William Blake. He's a writer. He had this poem that explains this. You may have heard this before, but it talks about the vision of Christ and how two people looking at the same thing can actually see two different things based upon their perspective. And when we say this perspective, it's really about one's own understanding one's own limitations, and how they are conditioned by the modes of material nature. I'll read it really quickly. The vision of Christ thou dost see, in my vision's greatest enemy. Thine has a great hook, nose like thine. Mine has a snub nose, like to mine. Thine is a friend of all mankind. Mine speaks in parables to the blind. Thine loves the same world that mine hates. Thy heaven's doors are my hell's gates. Both read the Bible day and night, but thou reads black, where I read white. So some of this may ring true because we may have been in conversations with people that we're talking about the same subject matter, but we come to two completely different conclusions. Those conclusions, based upon our biases, our individual experiences, our way of upbringing, and that is all summarized by the term conditioned nature. And what level of consciousness in these 5 stages of consciousness that I mentioned, one is at. If a person's just operating on the platform of self-preservation, where another person is able to see things from a different point of view, from a more philosophical point of view, they're going to come to 2 different conclusions. And they may not actually individually be wrong. They're just seeing it from their own individual ability. You look at the conflicts that we have between different countries of this world. A lot of times it's based upon self-preservation, defining lines in order to preserve one's own country, the interest that individual countries have for what? Preservation, be able to defend themselves, to be able to uh, fuel, to have monetary sovereignty, financial sovereignty. Um, so if another entity was looking at it and things in a much larger sense, a large, bigger picture, there would be a conflict that would arise. If you take it down, then you take it down to a more granular level. When you see that how people view and perceive the world, it oftentimes has to do with their individual experiences and how they've grown up. You look at the world differently. If you grew up, if you were raised by a mother versus raised by a father, if you were raised and you had strong women in your life, you'll perceive the role of women differently than if you grew up with only brothers and your mother didn't have a very strong father, and your mother didn't have a very strong role in your life. You'll see the world differently as a result of that. If you grew up poor as opposed to rich, and you had to work really hard to get everything that you wanted, as opposed to having things always available for you, you'll see the world differently. So when we see, and we can go on and on, if you grew up in so many different ways, you'll view things differently. And we can all name different ones, but I think you get the idea of what I'm trying to present here. So we have to be able to identify this. When we have conflicts, when we see things from different points of view, instead of letting it bother us, instead of letting it take us down a road of criticism, of trying to and allowing ourselves to become disturbed by it, we can revert back to this understanding that people see things based upon their own individual perspective, which is a reflection of their individual ability and their consciousness at that time. I'm going to put up, and when as I'm putting this up, I'm going to put up a couple pictures for those that are able to view them. And this will also kind of drive home the point of how looking at something, one can see two different things from one's own individual perspective. But if we apply this, you'll see that the conflicts that you have, you'll be able to understand them a lot better. You'll raise your consciousness instead of from the position of passion and trying to get what we want, to be able to elevate ourselves to look at it from a different point of view. There's the perspective of the balcony. If you're ever into a conflict with somebody, it can be recommended in the field of mediation that you try to remove yourself and go up to the balcony. And when you're on the balcony and you look down, you see it from a different perspective. So if you have a stage and the two actors on the stage are having a conversation, if you're on the stage, you see it from one perspective, but if you're on the balcony, you see it from a different perspective. So this will help us take us to the balcony and understand that where the other person is coming from. And that may change our reaction and our ability to interact and try to either solve the situation or be able to accept the outcome that we're of the current conflict that we're currently undergoing. Now, let me try to bring this up real quickly. You see this picture here? I don't know if some of you I know may not be on the screen. You may be traveling, driving to work, or doing some other things, but those that are on the screen. If you see this, what would you say it is? Anyone?
Bunny rabbit.
You see a bunny rabbit. That's good.
When I first looked at it, a rabbit, as I looked at it longer, it looks like a duck.
Duck. It's the same.
Bob has transcendental vision.
Charachandra, do you see anything else in it? You're usually good with seeing beyond what anybody else is able to see.
Oh, is this different than just the duck and the bunny? Are there more?
No, it's just the duck and the bunny.
Okay, I thought maybe you were bringing in a third level one that also has other things. No, I
No.
was saying that Bob has transcendental vision because he understood that it's both.
I wish.
Instead of, I was going to play the advocate and just say what the opposite of whatever Shobarade Mataji said and pretend that we were arguing for a while, but he already said it's both, so we're good.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, sometimes you look at it and you can't see it until somebody will point it out to you. The first time I saw this, I just said, I don't see how you see the bunny rabbit. It's just like you see the duck, and you just get so fixated on the fact that there's the beak, and there's the eye of the duck, and there's the head of the duck. It looks perfectly like a duck, and it can't be anything else. Until you detach yourself and open yourself up to saying, okay, it can be something. Okay, let me wipe the slate clean and be open to the fact that, okay, what could it possibly be? And somebody points it out and says, actually, let's look at it from the other side. And you see the mouth right there, and there's the eye. The eye's actually pointing the opposite direction to the right. And those things that you thought was a beak actually looked like ears. And you say, wait a second, that looks like you're right. I can see it. But it requires a little bit of detachment, to come to that point. But we can all dig ourselves in and dig our feet in, into a position. And what we learn here is that, not necessarily in this example, but due to our conditioning, we're going to pick positions and perspectives that we hold on to. Sometimes it's not always to our benefit in trying to understand somebody else's point of view. Here's another one. And you may have seen these before. They're used quite often in different, oops, I don't know if I lost that one. Oh, here we go. Do people see this one and what you see in this?
No, right now you have a distorted version of the same picture, just reducing. At least that's what I have.
All right, let's wait for a second. See if it pops up. Your screen share is paused. Let me stop sharing and then come back again. How about this one? What do you see here?
You see an old woman and an old man, but you also see, yes, two musicians.
With sombreros on.
Mm.
Yeah. So this is just an example of, again, once, we see things from our individual points of view. And this could be very dangerous in our relationships. In a higher sense, we understand from Lord Brahma, this can actually be very dangerous in our spiritual lives. If we apply this and understand our limitations, we will see our relationships with other individuals improve. We will be able to appreciate where another person's coming from, even though we may not agree. And it'll help raise our consciousness, not to the level of dispute, but to be able to come to a point of appreciation of another person's point of view. Okay, we can stop here and see if there's any conversation on this, any questions you may have. Hare Krishna. All right. Okay, I know I took it to a place today where we I took a theme that was out of this and took it into more of relationships. And that was just for the purpose of trying to be able to give us something that would be a practical application of this understanding of how we can see when we see things only from our individual ability, how it manifests in our lives. And it can create trouble in our lives. And we can project that all the way up to our philosophical understanding of Krishna. But when we understand our own limitations in a very basic level in our lives will improve. And it improves specifically with the people that we associate with and that we're around. Whenever we generate a reality that I understand and I know everything, and I can't be told any differently, we're essentially accepting our position as we understand everything, and that there's nothing out there that I don't understand about this. When we continue that level of understanding going forward, ultimately we'll get to the point where I don't need God because I can understand. And when we see Lord Brahma is telling us, don't think like that, because even I don't understand everything. Even Lord Shiva, nor Narada Muni. So this allows us to open ourselves to the idea that we are limited beings, and allow us to in life pursue the perfected being, Lord Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, I'll end with this one last point. And he talks about how Brahma, Narada, and Lord Shiva know about the Lord to a considerable extent, and therefore one should follow the instructions of these great personalities instead of being satisfied with our own tiny brains. And this is the highest stage of consciousness, this Anandamaya, is when we follow in the footsteps of the great authorities, those that have knowledge of the Lord to a considerable extent, who are empowered by the Lord, to guide us and direct us through the scriptures. When the instructions of the scriptures become real in our lives, then we're not seeing things from the level of self-preservation. We're not seeing things from the level of just trying to create some type of material situation on the mental platform here in this world. We're executing the real purpose of life. Our consciousness will be elevated. Okay, thank you all. I'll take any last questions or thoughts. If not, we can conclude here.
I have a question, sir.
Sure.
So, of course, we know in your example of the duck and the bunny that when we're dealing with a difference between, just sense perception and dealing with something that's coming from Shabda, something that's coming from an authority, obviously we choose, okay, instead of just trying to see this according to my senses, I will go ahead and listen to someone who knows what they're talking about and then accept it. So that's a good illustration for that. Now, what if, because we also find this phenomenon where within an institution or a philosophical system, sometimes there are opposing views and they're both supported by authority, and you still have this argument, no, it's like this, no, it's like this. So it's essentially you have the same duck bunny, but now both of them are being supported by Shastra. So what say you to how we understand that fully?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good question. And I was thinking that was actually the premise for me kind of looking at this when I read this 2 nights ago, and I was thinking how, the conflicts, even at the even at a spiritual or religious level, oftentimes, even if it's supported by Shastra, oftentimes it's looked at from two different points of view. Sometimes, so it can be I think so it can be in two different categories. As William Blake, was writing there about how, we both read the Bible day and night. Thou sees black, well, I see white. Meaning that we're reading the same thing, we're coming to a different conclusion. So it could be that our conditioned natures are allowing us to derive two different conclusions from it. So if one is not at a stage where one is looking at the Shastras from an unbiased perspective, so we can look at the scriptures and we can derive conclusions based upon what we want to get out of it, and we can justify it in that way. And throughout history, people have justified slavery, through the Shastras. They've justified the manipulation of individuals from different, levels of birth and castes, through the Shastras. Position of women, through the Shastras, and people see it differently based upon their conditioned nature. And both sides may say that it's very clear, You can't really see it from a different perspective. And if you see it from a different perspective, the other person must be biased. So that is definitely there. We see it in religious traditions going back, ages and ages, and even of today, where people see, from the mode of goodness, from the mode of passion, and also from the mode of ignorance, they can interpret different passages. So there's that is there. But then there's also the level of the purified souls, the acharyas. They also have different um, meanings or interpretations that they derive from different passages. And with that, because both are seeing Krishna in an uninterrupted way, we can draw a conclusion that sometimes there's different realities. Sometimes there's multiple realities. Jiva Goswami may uh, derive a comment expressing one thing. I can't think of one off the top of my head right now, but we see this sometimes where, we'll read that, Jiva Goswami, wrote it like this, but then another Acharya wrote it, a little bit differently, or came up with an alternative understanding or conclusion. From that perspective, we can see that sometimes there's multiple realities in Krishna consciousness, and that both can actually be true. That would be my answer to that. Do you have anything you would like to add on or to share?
No, that was a good answer. Thank you. Follow-up question then, because you basically gave these two levels. The one is, we're dealing with our conditioning, and so we're going to lean to a certain portion of the Vedas, and we're going to be comfortable there. And then there's the next level you just spoke about, where you're able to consider that both have validity to it. And so the follow-up question is then, how do we get from leaning on our conditioning within the philosophy to trying to accommodate the entire philosophy within ourselves? How do we leave behind that conditioning part? Because it's a comfortable position. Although we're affected by our conditioning, we're also leaning on Shastra. So it's comfortable. It's a crutch, but it's a comfortable crutch.
Right.
So the question is, how do we go from there, which is a okay position, to a better position of being able to accommodate all of the Shastra instead of just the stuff that makes sense to my particular situation.
Right. So we purify our consciousness through the process of hearing and chanting and living a Krishna conscious lifestyle, which will purify our ourselves. But then we also have to hear from those souls that are not affected through these biases. Best way is to go, for instance, like we have Srila Prabhupada, and reading, if we're confused about a particular issue, reading Srila Prabhupada's, letters, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, what did Srila Prabhupada say on a particular matter? Now, even with that, isn't completely, free from this, because people derive different conclusions, even from something that Srila Prabhupada may have said. But sometimes it's very clear. Sometimes it's, okay, this is clear, it's consistent. This is the message that keeps being delivered. Sometimes it's unclear, and sometimes we're left to think, well, okay, this was the line of thinking that Srila Prabhupada um, uh, had, and that line of thinking was very consistent. So now we have to project that out to what he would think of what we should be doing today, because we don't have that ability to physically ask him right now. But what we do have is access to uh, spiritually advanced, mature devotees who have studied Shastra and who live a life of of um, of Krishna, a life in full Krishna consciousness, um, who are not necessarily overcome by biases. And with the combination of ourselves trying to purify ourselves from these biases, and trying to actually search for the absolute truth, um, and then seeking out the association of those individuals and asking relevant questions to them, um, that can help us overcome, most of it, most of the trouble that we'll have. Really trying to see the truth objectively, and recognizing, where our biases may lie. Um, that's an important part of it. Um, Even with it, it still may not be completely changed, or it may take some time uh, to free ourselves from our particular conditioning. But it is possible. Um, Hearing from the bona fide spiritual master. Um, and then also challenging ourselves to free ourselves from uh, these conditions. That can happen as we uh, as we purify our existence uh, through the practice of spiritual life, chanting Hare Krishna, um, reading the Shastras, practice of our sadhana. Do you have a
Well, I'm satisfied by the answer. Thank you very much.
but even it could take it even further, because you could still have, two people who are, bona fide in the sense that they are Krishna conscious, and they view they live Krishna conscious lifestyles. They've studied the Shastras, they've come, and they still may have some maybe difference of opinion. Um, uh, they also have a different relationship. They have insights into Krishna that we may not have, and we may have to accept that fact that there's things that they may see that I'm yet to see, and that I haven't yet to know, and I can accept that and feel comfortable with that. That perhaps in time I will be able to see from their particular point of view, but I just can't see it from their point of view right now. What we have to do is be on guard ourselves so that we don't fall into the category of fault finding and criticism, if that would ever arise. See the fault in ourselves. Um, and that also comes from the perspective of seeing our own limitations. When we're able to see our own limitations, our first default position can be, actually, I may be wrong. Let me stand back and take a look at this a little closer. Let me ask somebody who is unbiased in this situation. Let me ask somebody who has more spiritual understanding and spiritual knowledge about this. But let me try to start with a clean slate instead of going in with an agenda.
Good policy, Jay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Charachandra Prabhu, for bringing those points out. Okay, it's 9 o'clock. Let us conclude here. Thank you all for your attention. we'll see you all tomorrow as we continue our study of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Vanchakopatarubhyascha.
Prabhupada Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo. Hare Krishna.